All right, get ready because today we are going deep on some really wild claims, like hidden city, some advanced technology, maybe even extraterrestrials.
Sounds exciting.
Oh, it is. All of this is from a text called, get this, The Biggest Secret in the History of South America, Hidden from the World.
Wow, someone's going for an attention-grabbing title there.
Right. It sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it does. So, what exactly are these secrets and who's hiding them?
Well, that's the really fascinating part. The source of all this is, get this, the Ugha Mongulala tribe of the Amazon.
Okay, I've heard of them. They're pretty isolated, right?
Yeah, very much so. And they claim to be descendants of gods that came from the stars.
From the stars, like extraterrestrials.
That's what they say. And they even have this historical record, they call it the Chronicle of Akakor, that
Wow.
tells the whole story of their people.
A chronicle, huh? And that's pretty interesting. So we've got a mysterious tribe, a hidden city, and a chronicle that sounds like something out of, well, the Biggest Secret book. Where do we even start with all this?
Well, I think a good place to start is with that chronicle.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What do we know about it? Who wrote it? And how reliable is it?
Those are the million-dollar questions. So, the chronicle is supposedly dictated by this guy, Nara, who says he's a prince of the Ugha Mongulala tribe.
Okay. But is he legit? I mean, has anyone been able to verify his claims?
That's where things get a little, well, murky. The authenticity of both Nara and the Chronicle has been debated for decades. There are some people who totally buy into it, and then others who say it's a complete fabrication.
Yeah, I could see how it could go either way. So a healthy dose of skepticism is probably a good idea here.
Oh, absolutely. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, that there's at least a grain of truth to this.
Okay, I'm game.
What can you tell me about these so-called gods and the city they supposedly built, Akakor?
Well, according to the Chronicle, these gods were pretty extraordinary beings.
How so?
Well, they arrived on Earth from the stars about 15,000 years ago. They had advanced technology, and get this, they had 6 fingers and toes.
6 fingers? Really?
Yeah, it's a very specific detail, right? And the Ugha Mongulala claim to be their descendants.
Okay, but they only have 5 fingers, right? Just like the rest of us.
Right, exactly. But they say that the 6 fingers were a sign of their divine origin.
Interesting. So is there any evidence besides the Chronicle to back up this claim about the 6-fingered gods?
It's mostly based on the Ugha Mongulala's oral tradition, but they also point to certain rock formations and carvings that they say depict these 6-fingered beings.
Okay. But, I mean, that's still pretty circumstantial, right?
Right. And to be honest, concrete proof is definitely lacking.
So, assuming these gods were real, what about this city they built, Akakor? What was it like?
Akakor is described as this incredibly advanced city hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest.
Okay, but where exactly?
Well, the Ugha Mongulala say it's somewhere in this remote mountain valley between Peru and Brazil.
Wow. So what did it look like? Give me some details.
Okay, so picture this. Massive pyramids, these huge spacious staircases, platforms for ceremonies. They say it was an architectural marvel unlike anything we've ever seen from the ancient Amazon.
Wow. It sounds amazing. But if it was so impressive, why haven't we found any trace of it? I mean, you'd think something that grand would leave some kind of archaeological footprint.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But that's where things get even more intriguing. The Ugha Mongulala claim that they actually destroyed the city themselves.
They destroyed it. Why?
They say they did it to protect it from European barbarians.
Wow. They'd rather erase their history than see it plundered by outsiders.
Exactly, and that speaks to a very deep-seated distrust of the outside world.
Yeah, absolutely. So Akakor, this magnificent city, is gone. But the story doesn't end there, right?
Right. You're forgetting about the underground cities.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about these. What were they called again?
Akakor Inferior.
Akakor Inferior. So what's the deal with these underground cities? Were they like bunkers?
Not exactly. Think of it as an entire network of 13 subterranean cities, all connected by these tunnels.
13 cities underground. That's insane. Where are they supposed to be?
According to the Chronicle, they're hidden beneath the Andes Mountains.
Oh, wow.
And they're arranged in a pattern that mirrors the constellation Ursa Major.
Ursa Major, the Big Dipper. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, and they're not just some basic caves either. They're described as these sophisticated, self-sufficient environments with artificial lighting and a water supply piped in from the mountains.
Seriously?
Right.
Okay, so how could a tribe, even a very advanced one, build something like that?
That's the big question, right? Even today, creating something on that scale would be a massive undertaking. The Ugha Mongulala say that they don't know who built Akakor Inferior.
They don't?
Nope. They claim the knowledge was lost a long time ago.
Okay, so we've got a lost city, a network of hidden underground cities. What about the gods themselves? What happened to them, and what was their technology like?
Well, the Chronicle says that the gods had technology that was, well, way ahead of its time.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, they had these crafts that could fly faster than birds,
Mm.
and they could travel day and night without any sails or oars.
Wow. Doesn't sound like your typical ancient sailing vessel.
Right. They also had these, quote, magic stones that they could use to see events happening anywhere on Earth, even in the sky.
So like some kind of ancient surveillance system.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty wild. But if they were so advanced, why did they leave?
Well, the Chronicle suggests that the gods knew that a major catastrophe was coming.
Oh, catastrophe.
And they warned the Ugha Mongulala to take refuge in those underground cities. A lot of people think this catastrophe might have been the Great Flood.
Okay, so the gods bailed just before things got bad.
Something like that, although not all of them left. The Chronicle mentions two gods, Lessa and Salmon, who actually stayed behind after making brief return visits.
So what did they do while they were here?
Well, Leonsa supposedly ruled over the remaining people, and Saman went east to establish his own empire.
Ah, I see. So they weren't just hanging out in the jungle. They were still actively involved.
Yeah, it seems so. And the Chronicle even mentions Loesa having a flying disc and Salmon having some kind of vessel that could travel over water and mountains.
So it sounds like the gods, or at least some of them, stuck around for a while. What happened next?
Well, that's when things start to get really complicated. We've got a war with some very strange beings, a cataclysmic event that reshaped the world, and then the unexpected arrival of, wait for it, the Goths.
Hold on. The Goths. Like the European Goths. What in the world are they doing in the Amazon?
It is pretty wild, right? That's what we're going to dig into next time.
I can't wait.
This Akakor story just keeps getting more and more intriguing.
That it does. And it's full of these twists and turns that make you question everything you thought you knew about history.
Exactly.
So join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the mysteries of Akakor. We'll explore those surprising connections, those strange enemies, and try to unravel just what happened to this lost city and its people. Okay, so last time we were talking about these mysterious gods, the Ugha Mongulala tribe, the lost city of Akakor, and those hidden underground cities.
Yeah, and just when you think it can't get any weirder, the Goths show up.
Right. Okay, so remind me again, how did they end up in the Amazon?
Well, according to the Chronicle, these Goths weren't just any Goths. They were actually descendants of Samon's empire. Remember that god who went east?
Oh, yeah. So these Goths traveled all the way across the ocean to connect with their supposed brother people, the Ugha Mongulala.
Exactly.
And the Ugha Mongulala welcomed them with open arms.
Great, according to the Chronicle, yeah. It says they coexisted peacefully and even exchanged knowledge and technology.
1,000 years of peace, thanks to a band of European Goths and a tribe that claims to be descended from aliens. It's a wild story.
Yeah, no kidding. But like we said before, we got to take all this with a grain of salt, right?
Absolutely. But it's still fun to think about. And even if we don't know for sure if it's true, it does raise some interesting questions about the ways different cultures interact and the things they're willing to share or not share.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the Ugha Mongulala's supposed destruction of Akakor to protect it from outsiders, it makes you think about how much history has been lost because people were afraid of what might happen if the wrong people found it.
Right. It's a reminder that there are probably so many secrets hidden out there, just waiting to be discovered.
Maybe, just waiting for the right time.
Okay, but getting back to the story. This period of peace obviously didn't last forever.
You're right about that. It all changed when the Europeans arrived on the scene back in 1492.
Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about South American history without talking about the impact of European colonization.
Nope, absolutely not. So the Chronicle says that at first the Ugha Mongulala thought these Europeans were the gods returning.
Oh, wow. But they quickly realized that wasn't the case, right?
Right. It didn't take long for them to see that these newcomers weren't benevolent deities. They were driven by conquest and greed, and they posed a real threat to their way of life.
So what did the Ugha Mongulala do?
They did what they knew how to do. They retreated back into their subterranean cities.
Ah, back to Akakor Inferior. Safe and sound. Or at least as safe and sound as you can be underground.
Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind.
But like we were saying before, even if those cities are real,
Yeah.
Finding them is going to be next to impossible, right? I mean, the Andes Mountains are huge.
Huge. And the Ugha Mongulala, if they're really down there, would be masters of concealment. Remember those massive rock doors they supposedly have?
Oh, yeah, the ones that move as smoothly as they did 10,000 years ago. It's mind-boggling to think about the technology involved in something like that.
Yeah, and the Ugha Mongulala say they have no idea how those domes work. The knowledge has been lost.
Well, whoever built those cities was definitely on a whole other level, technologically speaking.
No doubt about it. It makes you wonder what else might be hidden down there. Maybe even more advanced technology.
Yeah, the possibilities are pretty mind-blowing. But let's get back to this whole Nazi connection. I still can't quite wrap my head around how those two groups would even come into contact with each other.
Yeah, it's a wild twist, isn't it?
Hmm.
So according to the Chronicle, it all started with a German nun named Irmgard Schmidt.
A German nun. Okay, this should be good.
In the 1930s, she was part of an expedition that stumbled upon the Ugha Mongulala's territory, and she ended up getting captured.
Captured by a tribe that claims to be descended from aliens. That's quite the story.
And it gets even crazier. Instead of, being mistreated, she gained their trust, learned their language, and eventually married the Ugha Mongulala king.
Wait, she married the king, so she basically went from captive to queen of this hidden Amazonian tribe.
Exactly.
Wow. But what does this have to do with the Nazis?
Well, as the story goes, Irmgard became increasingly concerned about the growing threat from the outside world.
Rubber tappers, gold prospectors, all those folks looking to exploit the rainforest.
Exactly. So she decided to go back to Germany to try and find allies who could help protect the Ugha Mongulala.
A German nun, adopted into a tribe that believes they came from the stars, traveling back to Europe to seek help. It's almost too much to believe.
Almost right. But here's where things get really controversial. She ended up finding support from, of all places, Nazi Germany.
The Nazis? Seriously? But why would they care about a hidden Amazonian tribe?
Well, if you think about it, the Nazis were obsessed with occult knowledge and the idea of a superior Aryan race descended from an advanced civilization.
So they probably saw the Ugha Mongulala and their stories of Akakor as some kind of validation of their beliefs.
Exactly. It was like a perfect match for their twisted ideology.
And what about the Ugha Mongulala? What did they get out of this deal?
They got weapons and military training to help defend themselves.
So the Nazis were basically arming a tribe that believes they're descended from aliens. This is getting weirder by the minute.
I know, right? But is there any proof that this actually happened?
Well, like with a lot of the Akakor story, the evidence is pretty sketchy. There's no official documentation from the Nazi side, and most of the accounts come from people who claim to have been German soldiers stationed in Akakor during the war.
And those accounts are, shall we say, not exactly reliable.
Right. Critics say the whole Nazi connection was just made up to make the story more appealing, to people who are into conspiracy theories and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that the story was embellished over time.
Maybe even by the Ugha Mongulala themselves, to keep outsiders away.
Right, to protect their secrets.
So the Nazi connection, while incredibly intriguing, might just be another layer of the myth.
It might be. But even if it's not true, it doesn't necessarily mean the rest of the story is fake.
Right. There's still a lot to unpack here. But before we get into that, let's talk about Akakor's present state. The Chronicle says some of the subterranean cities are still inhabited, while others are deserted, filled with artifacts from the past. I mean, wouldn't it be incredible to see that with our own eyes?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine the archaeological discoveries that could be made.
Yeah, it would be groundbreaking. But realistically, do you think we'll ever get the chance to see Akakor inferior?
I don't know. The Ugha Mongulala are incredibly protective of their territory and their traditions. They've made it very clear that they don't welcome outsiders.
Yeah, and I can't say I blame them. After centuries of exploitation and cultural appropriation, who can blame them for wanting to keep their secrets to themselves?
I agree. It's their right to protect their heritage. And frankly, even if they did allow outsiders in, verifying the authenticity of anything we found would be incredibly difficult. The jungle is a harsh environment. Things decay, get overgrown, lost.
Yeah, and there's always the possibility of hoaxes, people looking to profit off the mystery. So it seems like, for now, Akakor is going to remain shrouded in mystery.
I think so, at least for the foreseeable future.
But even without concrete proof, the story itself is still incredibly thought-provoking.
Oh, absolutely. It challenges our assumptions about history, technology, even the nature of reality itself.
Right. And it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about colonialism and the impact it's had on indigenous cultures around the world.
It's a powerful reminder that there are still so many stories out there that we haven't heard, so many perspectives that have been silenced or ignored.
It makes you wonder how different our understanding of the world would be if we were more open to those alternative narratives.
Yeah. It's like, what if everything we think we know about the past is just the tip of the iceberg? What if there's a whole other history waiting to be uncovered?
That's a great question. But even if we never find Akakor, the fact that the story exists at all is pretty remarkable.
I think so too.
It speaks to our enduring fascination with the unknown, with the possibility that there's more to our world than meets the eye.
And that's a pretty powerful thing, isn't it? That sense of wonder, that drive to explore and discover. It's what makes us human.
Okay, so we've talked about the Ugha Mongulala, the lost city, the underground cities, the Nazis. What about the technology attributed to these gods? I mean, flying discs, vessel that can travel over water and mountains, magic stones for remote viewing. It sounds like science fiction.
It does, right. But if we step back for a second and think about it, a lot of ancient cultures developed technologies that seemed impossible for their time.
Yeah, like the pyramids in Egypt.
Right. To this day, we're still not entirely sure how they were built. So maybe what the Ugha Mongulala describe as flying discs and magic stones were just their way of explaining things they didn't understand.
Like maybe their ancestors witnessed advanced technology from some other civilization and interpreted it through their own cultural lens.
That's a really interesting thought, and it shows how our understanding of history is always evolving.
Absolutely. What we consider impossible today might have been commonplace thousands of years ago. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the cataclysms and wars mentioned in the Akakor narrative. The Ugha Mongulala believe that the Earth has gone through two major cataclysms, events that reshaped the planet and destroyed the gods' sacred sites.
Right.
And they say these events were foretold by the gods. Do these stories have any basis in reality? I mean, scientifically speaking.
Well, we know that the Earth has definitely experienced major cataclysmic events in the past, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, that kind of thing. Those events would have had a huge impact on any civilizations that existed at the time.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's possible that the Ugha Mongulala's stories of cataclysms are rooted in real events, maybe exaggerated or embellished over time.
It's definitely possible. And it's not uncommon for cultures around the world to have similar stories of floods, fires, and other disasters that wiped out entire civilizations.
Yeah, like the story of Noah's Ark.
Exactly. These stories often serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the power of nature and the fragility of human life.
Right, a reminder that we're not invincible.
And then there's the whole war between the gods and those strange beings, the ones with the red skin, hairiness, and animal-like heads.
Yeah, what's up with those guys? Who were they?
The Chronicle doesn't say, it just describes them as enemies of the gods.
It's interesting how many cultures have stories like this, these battles between good and evil, or between different groups of gods.
Yeah, it's a common theme. It could be a way of explaining the origins of the universe or even just human nature itself.
Maybe it's a way of making sense of the conflicts and struggles we all face.
That makes sense. So while it's tempting to interpret that war literally, it's also possible that it represents something more symbolic, some kind of internal or external conflict.
Right, it could be a metaphor for the struggles between different ideologies or ways of life.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that myths and legends often serve multiple purposes. They can be entertaining stories, but they can also be ways of transmitting values, beliefs, and warnings.
Okay, so let's revisit this Nazi connection one last time. It's just such a wild twist.
It really is.
But the more we talk about it, the more it seems like it might just be a fabrication.
It's definitely possible. I mean, think about it. What better way to make your story more intriguing, more marketable?
Than to tie it into one of the most notorious regimes in history.
Right. It's like instant intrigue. But even if it's not true, it doesn't necessarily mean the whole Akakor story is fake.
Right, exactly. There's still a lot to think about here.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe one day we'll find the evidence that proves or disproves the whole thing.
Maybe. Until then, the mystery of Akakor will continue to captivate us.
It certainly will. And it'll keep us wondering, what else is out there? What other secrets are waiting to be uncovered?
Okay, so to wrap things up, we've got this incredible story about a hidden Amazonian city, advanced technology, extraterrestrial gods, underground cities, a war with strange beings, a German nun who becomes a queen, and a possible Nazi connection.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It is. But even with all the uncertainty, all the unanswered questions, all the lack of concrete proof, the story of Akakor continues to resonate.
It does.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because, at its core, it's a story about the search for meaning, the desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves, and the power of belief.
That's a great point. It's a story that challenges us to think outside the box, to consider alternative perspectives, and to never stop exploring the unknown.
Exactly. And even if Akakor turns out to be a complete fabrication, it's still a powerful reminder of the limits of our knowledge and the importance of keeping an open mind.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. So, what's next for our Akakor deep dive?
Well, next time, we're going to delve into the Ugha Mongulala's belief in a third great catastrophe, their prophecies about the return of the gods, and what it all might mean for the future of humanity.
Sounds intriguing.
It is. Join us then as we explore the more mystical and prophetic side of the Akakor story.
Until next time, keep diving deep. You know, it's amazing to me how the Ugha Mongulala, even if their story is completely made up, how they touch on these things that we all think about. Like, what's our purpose? Will things ever be good again? Are we headed for disaster?
Yeah, you're right. It's like they're tapping into this deep part of us that wants to believe, wants to hope, wants to understand the bigger picture.
Exactly. And it just shows how powerful stories can be, how they can stick with us, even when we know they might not be entirely true.
Oh, for sure. Stories have this way of getting under our skin, making us question things, making us see the world in new ways.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Like, how do people react to a story like Akakor?
I think it really depends on who you are and what you believe. Like some folks, especially those who really value scientific proof, they're going to hear this story and just dismiss it as a hoax, bunch of made-up nonsense.
Right. They'll want to see the evidence, the archaeological digs, the DNA tests, all that.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have others who are more open to things that can't be easily explained, people who are drawn to the mystical or the spiritual side of things. And for them, the lack of proof might not matter as much. They might find the idea of aliens and advanced ancient civilizations totally believable, even without concrete evidence.
Right. They connect with the story on a different level, on a level of belief or intuition.
Exactly. And then there are those who are interested in Akakor for different reasons.
Like what?
Well, like its political implications, like the whole clash between indigenous cultures and the modern world, the potential for exploitation if these secrets ever got out, the idea of hidden societies controlling powerful knowledge.
Yeah, that's a whole other layer to this story for sure.
It is, and it makes you wonder, like, what would happen if Akakor was real and the world found out about it? Would it be a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a really interesting question, and I honestly don't know the answer.
Me neither.
But what really gets to me about this whole Akakor thing is just how the story itself, regardless of whether it's true or not, how it just keeps going.
What do you mean?
Well, like, even with all the controversy, all the skeptics, people are still talking about it, still writing books about it, still searching for evidence.
Yeah, you're right. It just seems to have this staying power, this ability to capture the imagination.
Exactly. It speaks to that deep human need for mystery, for wonder, for the possibility that there's more to this world than we can even imagine.
I think that's a really beautiful way to put it.
So what do we do with all this? I mean, we've gone through the story, the evidence, the arguments, but we're still left with this big question mark.
Right, we are. But I don't think that's a bad thing.
You don't?
No. I think it's okay to sit with the mystery, to embrace the unknown. And who knows, maybe by continuing to ask questions, to explore, to keep an open mind, maybe we'll get closer to the truth.
Maybe we will. And even if we don't, the journey itself is still worthwhile.
Absolutely, because along the way, we learn new things, we challenge our beliefs, we expand our understanding of the world.
And we connect with that sense of wonder and curiosity that makes life so much richer.
Exactly. And that's what Akakor ultimately does. It invites us to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, to never stop searching for the truth.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the mysteries of Akakor.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It has. But before we go, we want to leave you with one final thought.
A question.
A question that we hope will stay with you.
So, if Akakor does exist, and if the Ugha Mongulala really are the guardians of this ancient knowledge and advanced technology, what does that mean for us?
What does it mean for our understanding of history, for our place in the universe, for our future? It's a question that might not have a clear answer.
Maybe there isn't one.
But it's a question that's worth asking. A question that can lead us down paths of discovery and understanding that we might never have imagined otherwise.
So keep searching, keep exploring, and keep that sense of wonder alive.
And until next time, keep diving deep.